and we are live. And if everyone is wondering why we are laughing, it's just because every single time we go live, we have a little New Year countdown that brings us to the space, and it's absolutely hilarious for us on this end. But thank you so much to the audience for joining us tonight for a new episode with the Grit Makers and amazing, lovely, gritty, resilient ladies with me tonight. So, On Resilience is a podcast to share resilience stories, word spreading, inspire you, and get inspired together on these evenings. And I'm super excited to introduce you to a new panel with us with wonderful ladies. So, without further ado, I'm going to ask each of them, as usual, to introduce themselves briefly and their own personal definition of resilience. And Vanessa, you're up first.
Hello, my name's Vanessa Walker. I classify myself as a menopause specialist, but I am not a clinician. Haven't been to medical school, but I have done a GP course. My last 5.5 years have been really tough. And my definition of resilience is not accepting the hand that you are dealt. To do everything in your power to make sure that you make the best of your life because you only get one chance to live it. That's my definition of resilience.
Very poetic. I do love it. And that's a great opportunity as well to ask the audience if you want to drop us in the chat, what is your own definition of resilience? Please join us and drop us your own. And how about you, Amani? Tell us about yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here tonight. So my name is Amani. I am a nutritional therapist and functional medicine practitioner. And what does that mean? So basically, I work with actually predominantly women, but I help my clients uncover and understand the root causes of their symptoms, their chronic symptoms, as opposed to, I would say, the mainstream, healthcare model, which focuses a lot on symptoms. And there's always like medication that are given or potentially creams or whatever. My job really is to get to the root causes of it all, right? And then once we understand the imbalances, it's much easier then to create a personalized nutrition plan and then targeted supplements as well to support men and women who come to see me because I basically want everyone to live their best life, right? So I do a little bit of lecturing as well because I'm so passionate about what I do, and I do also a lot of corporate wellness workshops for the same reason. I want everyone to know about the power of nutrition to support health and well-being. And I would say my definition of resilience, I'm very visual. So I had this analogy, I want to use this analogy of like a rubber band, right? So resilience is really about stretching yourself, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically. And when I think about a rubber band, when you stretch the rubber band, you can achieve a lot, right? But it's important to be able to go back to a baseline. And this is why it's important to also look after yourself. And back to what you were saying earlier, Vanessa, it's really important to have boundaries in place, right? Because I always say that, resilience is a little bit like a double-edged sword, right? So it can be really powerful and help you to achieve anything you want. But unfortunately, if you overstretch yourself, then what happens? The rubber band breaks. And then what happens? Burnout, self-sabotage, depression, and so on and so forth. So that's my definition of resilience.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight again. We have these wonderful ladies introducing themselves because we are here tonight to talk about women's health and resilience. And it's a beautiful topic. And thank you so much for joining us. So, without further ado, Melanie, please do let us know a little more about yourself and your own definition of resilience.
So I would say, a holistic practitioner, a movement therapist, and I help predominantly women get in their bodies, have fun, enjoy movement again, but from a space that's very nurturing for themselves. And I do it through online classes, in person, and I run wellbeing holidays and events as well, where we get a chance to really immerse ourselves in moving for health and well-being and different ways. I kind of use dance, but I'd say dance not in performance dance, but more lyrical movement. And that has been a backbone for me throughout my life and with my health and well-being as well. And I would say my definition of resilience, like you, Amani, I'm a bit visual, and the word that came to mind was perseverance. And I also had this image of someone standing in the middle of a storm, just kind of literally digging their heels in and saying, okay, so I'm thinking staying power. And also I think that relates to my own journey as well. So that, but I also loved what both Vanessa and Amani were saying about that. And I think it all links, doesn't it? It's just, yeah.
I like perseverance. That's a beautiful word, actually. Yeah, definitely resonates. So.
Yeah, it's, I have to confess, this is probably the most poetic definition that we had.
Never thought you'd say that, Muna, but there we go.
What is your definition of resilience, Muna?
It is, the reason why I say it's poetic is that it transcribes certain preconceived ideas, but it's transcribed it so beautifully and from your own personal experiences that it's magical. For me, resilience has been a journey. Also, defining it is being a couple of years of research around trying to understand myself, but also the definition of resilience. And we kind of see it in a very static way. And I think a lot of your analogies bring the movement into it, which is the component that I think is interesting. Long story short, for me, resilience is growth and expansion, is a perpetual movement. And that it means that you're not just having shit thrown at you and remaining the same, but that you grow in the process. And I think that component of growth and expansion to me is very, very important in the definition of resilience. Otherwise, we're talking about endurance. Otherwise, we're talking about other terms that are not the kind of progress of movement. And I think as human beings, if we don't grow, a part of us die. And it's really something that maybe setbacks encourage us to go around, to stretch that rubber band, to go and step up in power. I think I would say it's not just standing in power, but stepping up, and definitely challenging those cards that you're dealt with and reinventing the game. So it's it's a super beautiful topic. Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But what I love about it as well is that I'm super grateful to have met each of you in like different contexts, because I definitely resonate with your stories and how I could see you have had to face that growth, whether it was voluntarily or forced into you. But for example, like I had never heard much about like certain areas that you ladies are in before we met. I definitely hadn't heard so much about menopause before, apart from like my mother when she had gone through it. But it's not something that I even considered for myself. It's something like many like illnesses or any other things that can happen. You just think it's happening to others and not to you. So for me, it's like, it's been great to meet so many, a new industry. And I saw you evolve, Vanessa. We discussed so much about your journey, and it's been great to follow it, because I want everyone to know, like tonight, how your experience with health has led you here today, and how you think it helps you tackle challenges from the lessons you've learned.
Oh, thank you. Basically, I had quite an idyllic life. Everything seemed to go quite well. Didn't really have many bumps in the road at all. And until about 5.5 years ago. And I was on a holiday with the family, and I suddenly started to become, I had a lot of pain. And I don't get ill. I don't suffer with pain, don't get migraines, never had really any problems at all. I live quite a blissful life. And I thought, oh, perhaps I've just picked up something while we've been away or eaten something dodgy, and thought nothing of it. And then I was on a long haul flight on the way home, and I hadn't had a period for 3 years. So I just naively thought, I'm out the other side. I've escaped all that stress and that worry, and ignorantly thought, that's it, that's wonderful. That's all that, I don't have to stress about anything. And then suddenly my period started in the middle of the flight. I had no supplies because I hadn't had a period for 3 years, and a huge amount of pain. So I had to ask a flight attendant for supplies. That then went on for nearly 2 weeks. I went to see the GP. Thankfully, they sorted me out, and it was a GP who was knowledgeable. But unfortunately, the majority of my withdrawal symptoms, because at the end of the day, that's what perimenopause is. It's a period of withdrawal symptoms, essentially. I couldn't get rid of it, and I didn't feel like me. A lot of women say they lose themselves, or they don't feel like themselves anymore. They can't really put their finger on why, but that is essentially the situation. And I just didn't know how to cope with that. I spent a long time thinking, how am I going to get through this? And the way I got through it was by doing as much research and absorbing as much information as possible. Now, I'm quite lucky. My husband's family, we have quite a few medical professionals. And this happened just before the first COVID lockdown, or about 6 months before COVID. And I suddenly had fits of anxiety. I didn't want to leave the house. But COVID actually helped me. Yes, it was awful for a lot of people, but for me personally, it was very useful because I was able to shut myself away, find out where the safe places of information were from my family, and do as much research as possible, because not, I hate to sound contrite, here's another phrase for you, knowledge is power. And another one, forearmed is forewarned. I felt like the more I knew, the more I could help myself. And that essentially is where, fast forward 4 years, I still hadn't found myself. So I'd done a lot. I changed my exercise, I changed my diet. So, the way that I worked out changed, what I ate changed, the way I lived my day-to-day life changed. Still wasn't me again. And it wasn't till I did a GP course in menopause that had been open to everybody, and I did the GP version. I was just desperate to learn as much as I possibly could. I thought, hang on a minute, it's not just me going through all this. There are women that have been dealt a lot worse hands than me, and my symptoms were probably only about 6 or 7 on the severity scale. There's a horrible statistic that a certain percentage of women every year commit suicide because they can't cope. We're in 2024. That's not right. And my whole, I suppose, mission in life now is to educate as many women and men and people of all ages that actually this happens to everybody, whether you get symptoms or not, that there are health risks implicated once you've gone through this stage. And I don't want to bring a downer onto this conversation, but that is my whole mission in life now, is to educate as many women as possible that actually this happens to all of us. We need to know what's going to happen. And if you know what's going to happen, you can help yourself. You don't have to rely on anybody else. Does that?
Amen.
Anybody want to chip in?
When I was going to say this is so cool, Vanessa, because I've been embarking. So my next phase has been menopause, and I've been in it for about 4 years. And very similar. Remember going through that early stage of perimenopause and going, "This is okay. Yeah, I got this." And then wham, like being hit by a truck.
it hits you like a ton of bricks, doesn't it?
And
Yeah.
I think that whole education, that piece that you're bringing, is so powerful because there still isn't enough information out there about it. And I think for women to understand what's happening in their system, so like you say, they can make choices, and you're not, because I know that one of the things I've struggled with is that what they call, I wouldn't call it brain fog, I call it brain drop. There's no fog.
It just doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Okay.
Because when you're there, you're not in the position to even go, oh, I need to figure this out, or because that piece. I mean, case in point, I showed up last week to do this call.
That's so common. That is, it is.
Oh
You
my
are,
goodness.
yeah. You are in the majority, not the minority.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I
very
think
much so.
there's still that people, I don't know what the word is, there's still a lot of hiding around it, like shame. That's the word I'm looking for.
I think, yeah.
That's one of the symptoms.
You say, you two, Amani and Melanie, you are very visual people.
Yeah.
Well, I always have a visual. It's almost like we're swans on top of a lake. We don't like to see what's going on underneath. You know, that it's all furiously paddling away, when actually on the top we just like to be seen to be cruising through life. And unfortunately, that's not the reality. And there are some wonderful statistics actually that say that community and talking to other women, whether they're going through the same experience or not, just by having social experiences, actually really does help. Having a conversation with a friend psychologically just buoys you up. So
I just wanted to share something, because I absolutely love what you said, Vanessa, about knowledge is power. I always spend so much time educating my clients, and I encourage them to listen to podcasts, to educate themselves, because I believe that, when you know better, you do better, right? So yeah, absolutely love that.
thank you.
It is so magical, right? You really emphasize this exchange, the community, this moment that we're sharing. And thank you so much, Kirsty Christy, sorry. Christy from Florida. That is a lot of F for me tonight. A long day. Thank you so much for joining us. Amity as well. Thank you so much for saying amazing mission, Vanessa. Thank you so much to people in the audience. Drop us a hello. Tell us where you come from. Tell us what your definition of resilience is. Or even more, tell us, are you going through menopause? Is this something that you are affected by? Is there something in women's health that you feel is affecting you? And do you have any questions around this aspect? Do you want to check in that any of other women are going through that? Because this is the thing, is communicating. It's the same issue we have with burnout prevention as well.
Yeah.
Shame.
Yeah.
Like this massive cloud over you that you carry, this need to represent, this need to hide the bottom of the iceberg. And as soon as you get in a room where you can feel safe enough to share, you're like, oh, we're all paddling in some areas. And actually, it was getting into a room together that got us to meet each other with Amani. Good old-fashioned networking events around wellness, though. So it was like, I'm grateful that we got to connect around things we're passionate about, and especially our health, and trying to understand a little more about ourselves, find ourselves. I think we're all in this journey. I think, Vanessa, we all in this perpetual journey trying to find ourselves. Either parts we've lost or parts we've always been oblivious to. And I think that's the magic of it. We never a finished product, just like continue adding to this painting. And I visualize it as an abstract painting. But with Amani, we connected because there was this similarities around breaking free from the corporate world She's embraced nutrition and gut health,
Yeah.
and now like there's like so much happening, doing so much
Mhm.
for women and other people, other humans.
Mhm.
What's fueled this?
Oh
What
my
you?
goodness.
Big
Um,
question.
yeah, it's obsession, literally. So, so my life, at least the first 2 decades of my, I'm not that young, but hey, the first few decades of my life were like a roller coaster. Oh my goodness. So I think it started, so at the age of 11, I was diagnosed with asthma, right?
Okay.
So I went to the doctor because I wasn't feeling well. I had like difficulty breathing. And so my parents took me to the doctor and they did a bunch of tests. And then the doctor said, okay, you have asthma. Here's a bunch of pills. Here's your inhaler. This is going to be your life
Mm.
from now on. I'm just like, well, you're 12, so yeah, I'm like, well, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started taking my pills like every single day. It was my life. And surprisingly or unsurprisingly, every year things were getting worse and worse and worse. So every year we go back to the doctor and do a spirometry test. Basically, you have to blow into a device that looks like a
Yes.
balloon, and then they kind of assess your lung capacity. And then the doctors were saying like, nah, no, it's not getting any better. So either stronger pills or more pills. So it was kind of the same story. And when I got a bit older, on like 18, I was just like, there has to be another way. Like it can't be just this for the rest of my
Mm.
life. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to start. So I was just like, whatever. So I went to university. So I'm from Belgium. So I went to university in Brussels. And after uni, I moved to Dublin, right? And I started working for tech company. And I was in sales, account management, and marketing, living my best corporate life. And then, as you can probably imagine, like a sales environment is a really intense environment. It's all
Yeah.
about productivity. You need to like meet the deadlines. You need to close deals. It's really intense. And then one day, I started feeling a little bit weird. Like I had the weirdest food sensitivities. One day it would be carrots, the next day it would be sweet potatoes, and then I started having, earlier we were talking about brain drop. For me, it was
Yeah.
proper brain fog.
Yeah.
And even like insomnia, you know the feeling, and I get that from my clients a lot, like when you feel like you're trapped in a body that is not yours. You know something is off, but you don't really know what. And I was
Yeah.
just like, there has to be something, right? So I went to see a couple of health practitioners, and unfortunately, because gaslighting unfortunately is a real thing, I just thought, you just got to rest, right? Not, oh, you're just made it up, you know? And I
Mm.
was really, really frustrated because I was really looking for answers. So I was kind of on the verge of burnout, so I decided to take a break. So I told my manager I'm going to take a month off. And this led me to actually, I was inspired to book a trip to Thailand, go figure. And I traveled to Thailand and I spent 1 month in Thailand. And over there, it was really about, because we talked about it like earlier, it's all about looking for yourself, improving yourself, growing. I was just looking for something. And one day I was inspired to walk into a wellness center. And as I walked into the wellness center, I met this lady. Well, she was at reception, and she was actually a nutritional therapist. And then we had a lovely chat, and then we clicked. I told her about what was going on with me, that I had no idea why, blah blah blah. And then she was like, "Oh my God, I can definitely help you." I was like, "Great, amazing." So we started working together. So as I was in Thailand for 1 month, I worked with her for 1 month, and then I went back to Dublin. I continued working with her for roughly 6 months, but remotely. Within 6 months, I was a totally different person. And this was the first time that I actually realized that there was a link between what I was eating and how I was feeling, the gut-brain connection, right? And I was so blown away. I was literally like, because naturally I'm quite hyper, I know, but I was so grounded and I felt so calm. I was feeling amazing. I was like, everyone needs to know about this. I cannot do this to myself. So I was like, okay, living my best corporate life. It was not my calling, honestly. So I was like, okay, I need to go back to university, to school, and I studied nutritional therapy. And when I got my qualifications, I was just like, that's it. I'm going to quit the corporate world. I moved to London. I started my own business, and oh my goodness, I have been loving this journey. Lots of resilience needed for sure, but I've been loving this journey because it's all about educating women, men and women,
Yeah.
about the power of nutrition, personalized nutrition. Back to what you were saying earlier,
Yeah.
Vanessa, I totally agree. Everyone can change their diet, but it's all about to really notice the benefits of nutrition, it has to be personalized, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. So I absolutely love what I do, and I love the idea of even though I work with men and women, I actually love working with women, just because of there's so much gaslighting in the healthcare, industry, unfortunately, and I really want to empower women to take control, to take back control of their health.
I would.
So
I've experienced the gaslighting as well,
really,
unfortunately,
oh my
very,
goodness,
very much so.
oh my
And
goodness.
I've even had a woman. I don't. I'm sure you've heard stories as well,
Mm,
who I was actually told by a female GP
yeah,
that in order to help her relax and prevent her anxiety,
yeah.
she should watch a good movie in the evening and have a glass of wine.
Oh my Lord. Oh my goodness. It's actually laughable, but it's
I
so
hate to
real.
say, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not good. It
no,
really, really isn't
it's
good.
really not
So I
good.
totally agree with you.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I agree that you can't have a one size fits all
Yeah,
cookie cutter treatment.
for sure.
We're
I
as
think
all as individual as our
Mm,
fingerprints.
Yeah.
How
yeah,
we can expect to go to a GP and just get prescribed stuff and there you
yeah,
go. That will
yeah.
sort you out. It's not going to
Absolutely.
work.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why, like, obviously, the healthcare system is what it is, right? And I'm sure, and I know there's some fantastic doctors out there, and they're doing their best. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, for a lot of women, there's a lot of gaslighting, and it's usually like symptom based. Oh, you've got a headache, here's a pill. You've got
yeah,
asthma, here's a pill.
yeah,
These days, like I haven't touched a single pill, no medication for the past 15 years because I don't have asthma anymore. It's gone. It's gone.
yeah.
And no gut problems anymore. So this is why I'm like I can't keep this to myself. I need to share with the world. So I am passionate, but I'm pretty much obsessed. So yeah, so that's me.
thank you. Thank you so much. And I definitely understand that, every single one of you and every single one
Mm,
of us is doing something because you found cracks in the system that didn't work for us. And
yeah.
it's about time you either sit and complain and live miserably or you do something about it.
Mhm,
And I love this seeing each of you doing something about it.
mhm,
Something else that I love is to see people repeatedly logging in in these evenings, and coming and saying hello. So, hello, Frank from San Antonio, Texas. I just want to give a big shout out as well to some members of the audience present here tonight because they have been repeatedly logging into the different subjects and very passionate about resilience as well. Uh,
mhm,
Christy D. Williams, I'm saying your name correctly now this time. I'm very grateful for your eternal support since we connected. Uh,
mhm,
check her profile out, connect with each other as well after the episode. Make sure you talk to each other because we are
mhm,
sharing topics of interest. So go check on each other's profile, connect, talk, spark conversation, share your favorite moments. Check on as well on Amity Peace. She's a wonderful professional. She's also my business partner. We've announced our partnership recently. So please,
oh, lovely.
I'm not going to,
Congrats.
I'm biased. But she's wonderful. She's another resilience advocate and she specializes in operational resilience.
Mm,
And is also a woman who can relate and have had nutritionist training as well in a past life, so she can relate as well
I
to
love it.
and of course, I can't finish this shout out without giving a big shout out to Frank Bryant, with who as well, I'm an auntie in his community, Voices of Africa, which is there to empower women. So just in this community aspect, what we were talking about, how community is important. What
Mm,
we're doing tonight is important. These connections are important. Connect with each other, but also see how other people as well are following this mission of empowering the world to be a better place for every single one of us. and that's so powerful. Um, One last comment before I move to your story, Melanie. Amitu is just saying treating the symptoms, not the cause. That is so much the problem. Even in burnout prevention, that's always what we focus on. Treat the top of the iceberg, and it's just a distraction. What a glass of wine does is just distracting us from the actual issue. But there is one thing that I know for sure a glass of wine cannot resolve. And that's something as well that I'm very grateful for you, Melanie, for reaching out, because I've put this call out and on a Laura's Super Connector event, and Melanie stepped up facing the storm to share her story. And it was really, I'm really admirative of that, because as much as I do feel comfortable sharing about trauma and having deep conversations, I think it takes a lot of grit and courage to reach out to a perfect stranger and say, I choose to speak up. And I'm super honored that you're joining us as well tonight and share your experience. I'm curious, can you tell us a bit more about your story, about how you faced such a big diagnosis that I will let you share with us, and how this fueled your journey and your purpose?
Oh, I feel really emotional actually, because I am so grateful to be in a room with such amazing women. So if I start crying,
We will all sleep
I'm
for
gonna
it.
cry as well.
I'm just listening to Vanessa and Armani's stories, and I'm like, wow. It's and yeah, I do feel quite emotional actually. And you know, particularly Armani, when you were talking about the gaslighting, because I was thinking about where do I start the story?
Yeah.
And I was going to start it at a point, I thought, but the gaslighting was actually what propelled me into making the choices I made.
Yeah.
And it started back in my teenage years with horrific menstrual hemorrhaging and
Oh
going
gosh.
going to the local GPs at Mail and being told, I remember this, it was all in my head.
Yeah, that's the big one. Oh my
I
God.
was, I
Yeah.
don't know how graphic we can get here, but tell me if it, but I was at a point when I was at university where I was waking up at 3 a.m. having soaked bed sheets.
Yeah, that's horrific.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the doctors were telling me it was all in my head. And so this was the reason I'm sharing this is because this was a real catalyst and I can see now from where I stand now, I look back and I go, oh yeah, that led to that, led to that, led to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I went through that and it propelled me into getting a spiritual healing. And I'd always been a little bit interested in spirituality from a kind of curious mental perspective. And I had a healing and it brought up all these emotions. And I went, wow. So this was happening in my kind of early 20s. And then I went off traveling and I ended up out in the States. And there's a lot of story in between here, but I ended up out in California. And again, I was guided towards doing a lot of mind body work and spiritual work. I met someone, got married, started a whole life out there. Was still dealing with the menstrual hemorrhaging and learning a little bit about holistic health as I was doing that. So I was starting to put the pieces together. And then about 5 years on from there, marriage wasn't really working. Life wasn't really working. And we made a big move from the West Coast to the East Coast in the States. And for some reason, I had medical insurance, which I hadn't had, which obviously it's different than in the UK.
Yeah.
And I decided to go and get a smear test. And I hadn't had one for a long time. And it came back abnormal. And then further investigations happened. And it turned out I had, I think what was stage 3 cancer.
Oh gosh.
What they called the serious kind that it wasn't something you could just kind of
Yeah.
So they were recommending hysterectomy, radiation of the
Yeah.
ovaries, removal of the lymph nodes.
Yeah.
And we sat in conversation and they basically said, if you do nothing medically, you've probably got about 6 months. So that kind of formed the now, going back, I'd had all of this mind-body training out in California. I'd been at this place called the Berkeley Psychic Institute, and I was learning about how the different parts was connected. And so then I get to this point where I've got this diagnosis, and I just knew instinctively that no matter what medical intervention I had, it wasn't going to make a difference. Like whatever was going on with me was much deeper. And I had to honor that. And I had about a week after the diagnosis when I kind of drifted in and out of meditation, didn't really talk to anyone. Family were freaking out. I come from a very conventional family.
Yeah.
And I came out of it with two things. And I thought, I need to leave this marriage and I need to go back to the UK.
Yeah.
And I had this sort of, in the middle of all this, I had this awareness of, are we allowed to swear, Muna, by the way?
Yes, you can.
This is key, because I literally said in my head, fuck that. When I go, it's on my terms. Cancer is not taking me out.
Yeah.
And that, I think, formed the basis. And I came back to the UK at 32, moved back in with my parents, which should be a book in itself, really, because it's...
Yeah.
That's hard.
And then I embarked on this journey of, I didn't even know really what I was going to do, but I knew, it's like I knew I was going to heal holistically, but I didn't know if I would survive. So I took this gamble, and I was literally serendipitously guided, and I worked on nutrition, I worked on family relationships, I got back into movement, which I hadn't been doing, and I trained as a dancer growing up. So movement was a key to my existence. And I realized that cancer was a watershed moment for me in life. I was heading down a road where I was unhappy, and I was kind of like not paying attention to it, but sort of.
Yeah.
And then the diagnosis came and whacked me in the face and went, how much do you want to live your life, basically?
Yeah.
So I took charge, and just was guided to different things. It took about 4 years. Well, after 4 years, I should say, I woke up one morning and thought, I'm going to go and get a smear test. Now, by this point, I'd left California. I was back left the States. I was back in the UK. Hadn't involved any medical doctors, made the choice I didn't want to, I knew if I got involved with the medical profession, that it would challenge what I was building on a mindset level. And I thought, I don't need to kind of sell what I'm doing to someone else. I just need to focus on what I'm doing. And so I woke up and I went to the local doctors. I got a smear test and it came back clear. And I literally went, this shit works.
Wow.
Yeah.
And actually, that was to be the beginning, really. That was the beginning. That was when I went, right, okay. Now I've built base level. Now what happens? Because you can't go back to the patterns you were living in.
No.
As you all know, we have to keep moving, and every day is a school day.
Yeah.
And this is 20 years on now. But and I started to after putting my own system back together, I thought, wow, it'd be so cool if I could work with other women and help them take charge. And it's that sort of happened in terms of movement and kind of one-to-one coaching, counseling, meditation and energy work, and just seeing, and I think it's still shifting as well, and I'm sure it is for all of you. It's like how you start doesn't necessarily stay the same. And so what I've realized as I sort of embarking on this mission and watching women not just shine in the world, but shine in themselves and really reconnect with their own bodies, is actually, if we can kind of take charge of our health so much earlier in life, like get that education, then we're taking the pressure off systems like the NHS, which were designed for emergencies. So then, we're creating a better...
Goes back to knowledge again, doesn't it?
Exactly. So I've sort of realised that there's that part of it too. And I continue to work on my own health and well-being. And Vanessa, as I was saying, now I'm in menopause, so the goalposts have moved again.
Yeah. Can't rest on your laurels if you're female, can you?
There was a point where I went, oh yeah, I've got this. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm in great health. And then bam, oh, menopause. Oh,
Yeah,
where's the manual for this?
that's the problem. There isn't one.
You have to build yours.
And I think that's what I realized is, okay, this doesn't stop. This never stops.
No.
You're always.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I try and I work with movement and with myself and with other women. And I try and bring a lot of humor to the space as well, because I think I didn't realize how important that was for me. And especially because things like this can get so serious. And they are, but it's also, if we can remember the lightness of life, I think that helps us. So yeah, so that's
But
good.
But this sentence really resonates. It's so funny because we were having a conversation with my friend who I'm staying with when I'm visiting, and we talked about lightness. We talked about how I remember saying to her, you know, when we're born, we're light, not in the holistic side of, you know, light
Yeah.
and darkness, but you're light. You don't have the weight of the world on your shoulders. You don't have responsibilities. And it's like, how can we, you know, when we talk about traumas, we talk about like how the inner child throw the toys out the pram, and we embrace easily the negative side of our inner child. We don't embrace the positive sides and the lightness. How you can just sometimes have this need to roam free and like run naked on the beach and just have fun.
It's activating our spirit, isn't it? It's like, and that's what I realized. It's like, oh, I was in such a serious place, and I'd forgotten that I was to enjoy myself. Literally. Yeah.
There is one thing. So, like 2 points in the chat. Amit is mentioning that, you know, you're divorced from your body. So once you reunite, you connect it to yourself again. And of course, we have one wonderful man joining us, at least Frank, who is there. Of course, this is we talk about women's health, but everyone is part of the journey. And I think there are challenges cross genders and cross all situations. But it's something that we do together. I think even if there is something that is specifically affecting someone, whether it's gender related, because well, there are some things that only happen to women, no matter how you identify. But it takes a village, and yeah, we're grateful to have this village and to build it as well. So as part of building this village, with bringing in the knowledge in the village school, I'm wondering, of course, every single situation is different. Of course, there's no one size fits all, but we're trying to look for success models that we can perpetuate, or good habits, or something. Is there some sort of formula to help us keep up with our health despite the changes? Is it maybe doing regular checkups? Is it regular mental checkups? What do you suggest, ladies?
Gosh, that's a big question.
It's a big question.
I went straight in.
Yeah.
I think from my point of view and my understanding is that knowing that you do have to change. So what's suitable for you, whether it's nutrition or exercise or whatever we're looking at in your 20s, is not what you need in your 30s, and it's not what you need in your 40s. I think I definitely got stuck in the mindset of that's the way I've always done it, and that's the way I will always now do it. Rather than realizing that actually every 5-10 years you need to kind of have a rethink about what you're doing, whether that's nutrition or exercise or your personal health, because that time's going to carry on ticking down whether you want it to or not, no matter how old you feel in your head. You know, up until about 5.5 years ago, I still felt 19 up here, and I've just turned 50. So it's the realization that you do have to change. Part of me didn't even realize that I was getting that age. It's just that awareness in the first place. That's my opinion anyway.
I think I totally resonate with what you're saying, and it's interesting. So I work a lot with women, and so in my intake form, one of the questions is, if you had a magic wand, what would you like to achieve when it comes to your health, right? And a lot of women will say, I want to go back to my 20s because I was feeling, I don't know, amazing, like no
Yeah.
hormone imbalances or whatnot. And I'm like, I've seen it a couple of times. I'm like, this is really interesting because actually, what I want to recommend is being adaptable and embracing change, right? Because, like you said brilliantly, if you felt, for example, up until recently, a couple of years ago, that you were 19, well, actually, no, you're not, and that's okay, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That is okay because I see a lot, and I know we say that in a joking way, like we're like, oh, being a woman is stuff, a woman is tough. I don't like my hormonal changes, my hormonal imbalances, my periods, and all that stuff. But actually, and I know we joke about it, and that's totally fine. But actually, a lot of women really hate it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, actually, if you started embracing all those changes and you were like adapting your diet and your lifestyle accordingly, it would be actually potentially marvelous, right? Because also what I do with my clients, like when we start working together, we do a nutrition audit. And I remember working with this client. She was, I don't know, 40 plus, and she was like, okay, so I've been having this cereals with milk for breakfast for the past, I don't know, 20 years. I was like, this is interesting, right? Because she's always done, the same
Yeah,
thing for like
exactly.
20,
Exactly.
exactly. And I'm like, I understand why we're creatures of habit, totally fine, but you're not the same person, right? So it means you need to make some changes, and that is okay. Change doesn't mean it's bad. I don't know, because you're getting older, then you're rotting or anything. I'm actually really embracing every season of my life because I know now, obviously through my second career education, all around nutrition and wellness, I know that actually it can be an amazing experience. So whenever I look at symptoms, I know I'm probably weird, but whenever I look at symptoms, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get curious because symptoms are your body's way of communicating with you. They're not always
Exactly.
pleasant, but if you get curious, then it's much easier to embrace the changes and also be more like adaptable. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I was just thinking, it's like, I find that curious that people want to go back to their 20s, because for me, my 20s, I was ill.
You don't want to visit that again. I
Yeah,
don't blame
I'm like,
you.
no, I'm not going back there. I'm quite happy here.
Yeah.
I wasn't ill, but to be honest, I was broke, and I don't want to go back to that year.
I was so insecure when I was 20, so nope.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I for myself, and then when I work with clients, encourage them to create a practice. So for me, it's like a quiet time practice or meditation and movement and checking in with what I'm eating and kind of keep it fluid. So it's like I'm not doing exactly the same thing each day. I'm
Yeah.
checking in and going, oh, what feels right today? What combination?
Yeah.
And then and so it's easier to kind of shift as we go along. And it's that, I think my sense of that, I can't even remember what your question was, Muna, but I think it's
No worries. It's interesting. What you're
yeah,
saying is interesting. Continue, carry on, please.
I think it's that ability to be in present time, which clearly I am right now.
Yeah, very much so.
On the question.
Talking about present time, I think another point of view I have on this, if you don't mind me sharing this, because I don't want to keep talking, is that what I do now, I never thought of before. I think about what I want to be doing when I'm 70 or 80.
Wow.
So, for example, exercise, Melanie, I was always, and diet, I was always thinking, how do I stay slim?
Yes.
Previously, I was a size 8. I probably didn't eat enough. I probably did the exercise to stay thin.
Yeah.
Whereas now my focus is, right, well, when I'm 75,
Mhm.
I still want to be able to lift those 2 heavy shopping bags out
Yep.
of the boot of the car and
Mhm.
carry them in without fear of falling, because I'm working on my balance, I'm working on my strength, I am eating the right things, like protein, for example,
Yeah.
to make sure I can build that muscle, that I can keep my core strength. That's what I think about now, is actually I'm thinking, right, when I'm 70, 75, 80, I still want to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people, not just women, think about that. It's all about, I
It's
want to keep this
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And
I
I
don't
think
care. I don't, it's not that I don't care about that. I'm more interested in what's going to happen 20, 30 years down the line now. I never have thought of that before.
and I think the
You
culture,
know,
like you're saying, Vanessa, that celebrity culture, it's
exactly.
geared towards that. Because I was thinking about it the other day, I thought, why are we so obsessed with almost going backwards? I quite like my lines and the things that are happening to me.
Yeah.
Is that
Shows your experience, doesn't it?
yeah, it's this is my life that's on here, you know.
Mm.
And yeah, and so I've just become curious about that, as you know, with that kind of that it's almost minimalist, isn't it? It's like trying to kind of restrictive, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
restrictive
Yeah.
way of living. And
Mm.
like you're saying about, you know, when I engage in movement and work with movement, it's from feeling that joy of being in the body and the miracle of being alive in these kind of, you know, these active
Yeah.
systems that we have. So yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. I love that. I love that because so I work with a lot of women who are, let's say, over 45, 50.
Yeah.
And I look up to them. I look up to them because I'm like, oh my goodness, you're a certain age and you're doing all of what you're doing. Like you're working with a nutritional therapist because you want to sort out whatever your health, your wellness, your whatever is going on with them. And I find it absolutely amazing. And also, I don't know about you, but like we probably hear it also in social media. On social media, you know, I don't know, after a certain age, you have expired. And I'm like, actually, no, I'm making plans, just like you, Vanessa. I'm
Yeah.
making plans for when I'm 80. I'm going to be lifting weights in the gym. And not because
Exactly.
I want to look a certain way. I
Yeah.
love the feeling of being strong. And
Exactly.
you know, Muna, I share it on social media all the time. Like, I'm following a lot of like accounts on Instagram of like people in their 80s who are fit, and it doesn't necessarily mean they have a certain physique, but they look strong. So it's not
Yeah.
about being thin or anything like it's about feeling strong and being able to do whatever, to go hiking at
Exactly.
80,
Yeah.
to go, I don't know, like bungee jumping if this is what you're into, you know? And I'm like, and also, I think you said that also, like, Vanessa, like, or maybe that was Melanie or both of you, like, getting older is a privilege. Not everyone gets it.
Yes.
So every year when I celebrate my birthday, I'm like, hallelujah, let's pop the champagne. I'm happy to be alive because unfortunately we all know people who have not made it. So yeah, so I look at like getting older as like a privilege, an opportunity to continue doing what I'm doing or do even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's there's this like 1% better every day. I think like good wine, we get better with age. This is coming from a sober person, by the way. I'm not promoting drinking or anything like that, but in a past life, I have been very passionate with wine, and I this I love this thing of actually bringing the component of resilient in a resilient life, a resilient approach that
Mm,
implies self-love, because that's really the core of all my work, is understanding that resilience is not about like just standing up at all costs, just keep pushing in adversity. It's about how you can have the courage to love yourself and explore what loving yourself means. And having this aspect of exploring it over time is something that actually I don't think we ever discussed in any episode. And it's something very beautiful, this fluidity in your routine. is exactly something that I set myself to do as December goal in the well-being circle of the community I'm part of. Because I noticed that when you have a routine like meditating and journaling every morning, it just becomes so automated that you don't have the same mindfulness and consciousness of that present moment. And actually, shaking things off just enough to be able to explore that presence is definitely something I want to implement. And it's just, like I say, serendipity. We all connected tonight for a reason. Someone mentioned in the chat as well, well, our favorite, we're debating around, the fact that so many doctors are men. So men definitely need to hear this too.
Yeah.
And there is a very, very big component of awareness needs to spread through every gender. What is also important is to encourage more women to get into medicine. I know, of course, it's happening, but not
Yeah.
everywhere in the world. And I think it's important that when we talk and we share, we think of bringing all best practices across border as well and exchanging with people from different culture to try to address the problem. Like when we think about it and how it impacts countries with a healthcare system, imagine countries where there's no healthcare system, no
Yes.
insurance, nothing in place. Women find themselves alone in the middle of places where they don't even have supplies.
Yeah.
Um, so when it comes in, and someone else mentions like, perspective shifts, and that's the beauty of it. So how can we make educating ourselves easier when it comes to the specifics? Because you've done a lot of research, taken experimentation, of course, taking courses and trainings. But for the average person busy with their daily life, how can they get these nuggets?
From a peri and menopausal perspective, that's still quite hard. It's getting easier. I think Newson Health, Dr. Louise Newson, and the British Menopause Society, and there are more celebrities when it comes to menopause who are actually spreading the good word. But I think it's where to get safe information from that's actually factual. That is not just hearsay or rumor or trendy or from TikTok. And there is a lot of misinformation online. And that's hard because there are a few really good sources of safe information, where to get it from, but it's knowing where those places are. And I'm assuming it's the same probably in the nutritional world.
Oh,
And it's that misinformation that's hard. So I don't know how to answer that question because I was very lucky. I had people that knew where the safe places of information were and that I could ask and then go away and do my own research. Not everybody has that luxury, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing in the first place. So I don't know what you ladies think about that. I don't think I can really answer that question, to be honest.
I think for me, I would say education in schools would be the ideal situation,
Yeah.
right? So, for example, I don't know, young girls when they start menstruating at, I don't know, 11, 12, 13 or whatever, um, for a lot of girls, it's very traumatic because they don't know what it means, and maybe their parents, their mother, haven't really told them, what it means and how to go about it. So I think having some form of education in school, like in primary schools, would be absolutely amazing. To me, it has to be a no-brainer. Because for example, from a nutrition point of view, because I'm a nutritionist, I think, nutrition should be taught as well in school, like in primary schools. It should
Yeah.
be mandatory. And I believe in some countries, think in Japan, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe I'm wrong. It's actually taught in schools as well. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is how it should be. So education in primary schools, and I think maybe there's still a lot of like stigma around like, the female body, and we don't necessarily want to talk about it, or it's a bit like, ooh. But I think, yeah, starting with education in school, I think that would be amazing.
I think educating our medical professionals is also important,
Ooh.
because when it comes to menopause, it is not obligatory. It is not something that you have to do. Now, this is different across the board in different countries, but it is an optional extra. And over 50% of the population will go through it. But to me, that shouldn't be an optional extra.
Yeah.
Mm.
I agree with you, Amani, about getting that education in at that school level.
School, yeah.
Getting it into the children's awareness, I think, because I think what happens is when we get to adulthood and we're full up of life experiences and we're full up of our busyness in life, we don't know where to start. So when I work with people and I'm particularly sort of trying to get them into movement and energy work meditation, I say 2 minutes on the loo. Put yourself in the toilet for 2 minutes. Do that every day, or 5 minutes, walk around the block. 5 minutes back. So it's like getting people into a conscious action that if they've not done that before, and I know for me that kind of calming the brain down and also re-engaging in movement helped me get more centered in the body, so then I could make better choices in life. And I think that can also come in at that, like you were saying, Amani, in that education level, teaching kids how to quiet the brain, and
100%, because like so many kids come from like chaotic families, and you know, their nervous system is dysregulated. They come to they go to school and they're like all over the place. They don't know, like they're really stressed. I remember, that's more anecdotal, but like when I was living in Dublin, I had this friend, and she also left the corporate world and she decided to become a yoga teacher. And then she reached out to a couple of primary schools to offer free yoga sessions a couple of times per week. And again, anecdotal, she hasn't done any like studies, and she hasn't done the same she hasn't done the same experiment in other schools. So basically, within that school, oh my God, game changer. The kids were much more calm. Their grades as well were better. They were behaving in a totally different way because they started like maybe 2 or 3 times per week. They had like just 10 minutes of yoga. I mean, I'm sure they can sit, you know, quietly for like more than 10 minutes, but it just started with 10 minutes. And my goodness, game changer. So yeah, I totally hear you. Movement and you know, this like, you know, body mind connection is so important.
There's so much that we can do, just like tiny little details that can move the needle a long way. And we've been talking a lot about, you know, almost things at an individual level in terms of what people can do, how they can receive information. Some of us have experienced the corporate world, so I want to bring this like to the companies. You know, a lot of people are actually working within businesses, some healthier than others. Um, and because this is still pretty new, the question is like, are they actually equipped to offer support in these areas when it comes to women's health? And what strategies can they develop?
There are some companies who are very proactive when it comes to menopausal health. Some of them are large conglomerates that are actually very good at educating all their staff. But then you seem to have the flip side. So you'll have companies that do a tick box exercise. They do the training, they pay it lip service, and then it's not mentioned again. So there's no kind of, with perimenopause and menopause, you could be in perimenopause for 7 to 10 years, even longer in some cases. It can go on for a long time. And that's the period where you have symptoms. So that support is needed, understanding is needed. And if companies treat that as a tick box exercise, that is not going to happen. And then you have the companies that do nothing, don't even pay it lip service. So unfortunately, the really good companies still currently seem to be in the minority. But because it's more in the common consciousness and it's being talked about more, hopefully that will push more companies to go into the more proactive prevention is better than treatment. We're going to arm our staff with all this information, and then that will help us with longevity and lack of sick days, and we'll stop. A lot of menopausal women and perimenopausal women are at that point in the corporate world where they've got to the upper echelons, they've got to the top, and then suddenly, as you said, Melanie, they hit this brick wall. And if that support is not there, there's an alarming statistic that a large proportion of women leave the workplace because they just can't cope.
Yeah.
And don't feel that there is another alternative. That should not be the case.
Yeah.
And that comes again with an understanding and support. But I really don't think we're there yet. Because a lot of women don't even realise they're menopausal in the first place.
Oh my
It
goodness.
comes back to education.
It
can take it can take 4 or 5 years before you realise, oh, hang on a minute, I've got a friend who was talking about it, and actually perhaps that's what I've been going through for the last few years or X amount of years. So a lot of women don't even realise. They don't even know what perimenopause is, let alone actually that's what they're currently going through. So that's the situation, I think, in the workplace as regards to menopause and in the corporate world. So
How you mentioned there's like some companies that are doing it pretty well. What would that look like? So let's say if we had a young founder that is building a business that is scaling fast, and they are looking to build a business that could support that, what can they model?
Oh God, I think that comes back again to knowledge and support, and it's just a basic understanding of what this is, what this stage of life is, and what women will go through, and what families go through. Because usually when this happens, you have aging parents, you might have teenage kids going through exams, you've got to a certain place in your career, and life is hectic, and we'd rather keep our heads down and not admit to ourselves what's going on. So I think it's knowledge, it's understanding of what that stage of life actually is, and then being able to have an open and honest conversation. And it's about trust, I think, and communication, and being informed enough and having that honesty where actually people are happy to come and speak to their bosses and to their line managers and say, hang on a minute, I am feeling like this, and not be gaslit. Because gaslighting is huge in this stage of life. So I hear where you're coming from on money. But I think there is an awareness as well of what support women need. And it's as basic as that. And having an understanding and being flexible. You know, so some days I might need to come in a bit later. So, and can I stay a bit later? And it's having job flexibility. Oh, I need to go and have this test, or I need to go and do this, and understanding why and why that's important. So I know that's very basic and very vague, but I think it depends on the sort of company that you are in. Like we were saying, one size does not fit all. I don't think you can have really stringent, yes, you can have rules and regulations, but I don't think you can have, every single company is different and how they work is different, and the demographic of the company is different.
And I was just thinking as you were talking, Vanessa, if they start to put some sort of, I don't have any experience of the corporate world, so I'm just kind of spitballing, but I think if they put some sort of structure in place from when women join, because I'm thinking about menstruation, which is still an area that is, you know.
So I think there's a couple of companies that I know they do like period leave. That's it. I would say it's better than nothing for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
They have like PCOS leave as well, or endo
Yeah.
leave, or whatever. Better than nothing, but it's still a little bit what we discussed earlier. It's surface level. It's just addressing the symptom, not the root cause, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like, oh, tick box. They're ticking a box.
It
They're like,
takes
oh
box
yeah,
exercise. Yeah.
absolutely,
Let's forget
absolutely.
it and move on. Yeah.
Exactly. So how do we know? Of course, we're supporting women, but then also back to what you were saying, both saying like, even like the menstrual cycle, like a lot of women, and I'm gonna raise my hand here. I wasn't totally aware, like the different phases of the menstrual cycle, because
Yeah.
your productivity is going to be different, your energy levels are going to be different.
Yeah.
But and I think about my experience in sales, I was expected to show up exactly the same way every day, to have the same energy, same productivity. But actually, back to what we discussed about like embracing change and everything, like if you know about your different phases, of your menstrual cycle, then you're like, okay, now I'm definitely entering luteal phase. So I'm going to
Yeah.
focus on this.
Exactly.
I'm going to do less of this or more of that. And that's okay. Because I was also personally beating myself up. Because I'm like, how come I don't have the same level of energy? What am I doing wrong? Uh,
Not
so
doing anything
yeah,
wrong. That's just the way it is. Yeah.
exactly,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think it's where companies are built from that sort of patriarchal perspective,
Yeah,
where,
literally,
you know,
literally. Yeah.
because I learned so much about my period when I went through my
Hmm.
own issues with it, and it was like so strong that in ovulation I was so creative, and in menstruation I needed to
Yeah.
hide away from the world. And can you imagine,
Mhm,
if the culture, the corporate
mhm.
culture was built by women,
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that would be totally
there'd
different.
be moon circles and yeah.
Just talking about cycles. One of the symptoms with perimenopause is that your cycle can completely go crazy. It
Yeah.
can be on a roller coaster system.
Mhm,
So I I didn't have one for 3 years, and I thought I
mhm,
was at the other side.
mhm,
Some women have them very, very regularly, and that can be
mhm,
so draining and
mhm,
so tiring that they're in that perpetual I want to hide away from the world.
Yeah.
And that
mhm,
can be week on week on week on week. It can go on for
mhm,
weeks.
mhm,
And that's really not good either.
mhm,
It literally is like a roller coaster. You can
mhm,
go up and down, and never know where you're going to be the next day,
mhm,
let alone the next week.
mhm.
So, yeah.
There is something that Frank is mentioning in the chat, working with a bunch of mature ladies, the office is super cold. And because
Sorry, Frank.
hearing that the caveat is that the company CEO is one of the ladies, so
Yeah.
not complain.
This is when you have to go to the office.
But it's a funny thing. Of course, we can laugh about it. But talking with Vanessa, like beforehand, like we've had conversation where it reveals like not everyone has the same symptoms.
Yeah.
And
Mhm,
talking about, I don't know if there's any PTs in the audience or people in the fitness circle, but um, there is different training as well
mhm,
we have depending on your cycle, but it
mhm,
varies from a person to another. So I know
mhm,
certain women that are better to do cardio during the period phase, and I know others that are better with strength
mhm,
training during that time. So it's like I understand that when it comes to education, it's very hard because you have all the information and all its contrary, and you're dealt with when you say, these snippets on social media, you have
Yeah.
like one key thing that works for someone and doesn't work
mhm,
for the other.
mhm. Yeah.
Is it like a lot of trial and error that you go through?
And I think it's learning to listen to your own. It's like getting the education and then activating your intuition so
Mm,
that you can you've got that education and you can listen to your own body and go, oh, okay, this
mm,
is the message that's coming through, and then I've got this education over. So it works both together. So you've got that.
mm.
But yes, I'd also think it's trial and error because you don't always
You
get the
don't know what's
channel
going to work.
right.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
But I think also one thing that I'm trying to do when I go into corporate and I do like workshops. Personally, like, I don't pitch one-offs anymore, for a very good reason, because if you just provide, one workshop, it's going to be great and all, but what's going to happen? Not pretty much, like, I'm
Nothing.
pretty sure
Yeah.
nothing, right?
You got to go
But
back. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so one thing that I have trialed with a company as well is to offer clinic days. So you do a workshop, and then either within, like, during the same day or another day, you come in and then you do like a bunch of consultations, like, even if it's half an hour, but it's individual consultations, because obviously, like, in a group setup, like, not everyone is really comfortable, speaking
Yeah.
up and muting
Yeah.
themselves or whatever, but they might have individual questions. And probably you will agree with me, Vanessa, but like, whenever I do a workshop, even though it's so interesting, I pitch hormonal health because I really want to talk more about it. I think
Yeah.
like everyone needs to know about it. But my signature workshop is gut health. They always say gut health, gut health, gut
Yeah.
health, because they keep saying like hormonal health. Oh, well, I'm not sure, it's not very popular or whatever. And I'm like, ooh, I'm fuming.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But
it's something that people
even
don't want to talk about.
you
Yeah.
don't want to talk about it. It's
No.
stigma or I don't know what. But then, surprisingly, after I finished my gut health workshop and I do a clinic, the women come to me and guess what? They talk about hormonal imbalances.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
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 It is quite interesting. You only know what you know.
Yeah.
And I think when you mention, if you run a workshop or if you talk about something, you always have that preconceived idea that it's like it is with others. And how can how can it be facilitated to dial in, learn to listen in to your body, or be more self-conscious? What has been like the big things that could be a pull towards that, other than the life catastrophes, right?
Yeah, because we don't want to keep manifesting those.
I really want to pick what could be one small tiny habit or question that could maybe open our world to some different ideas.
Hmm.
Well, mine would be the 2 minutes on the toilet. Just, I say I make it a joke of it, but it's that, like, create a little bit of time where you
Mhm,
just almost disconnect from everything else
mhm,
and you just go into that quiet space.
mhm,
And I've found that building on that daily opens up that
mhm.
channel to listen to your own inner guidance,
Yeah.
because we're so busy filling our time with information as well. And I think education is massively valuable, but we're also filling our
Right.
space with that. And we need to create that space also to hear that inner voice or
Mhm,
guidance, whatever you want to call it. So that's
mm,
For
yeah.
me, I think with this stage of life, it's talking to women, your friends, about this. Because a
mm,
lot of women that I see and a lot of friends that I have and a lot of women that I've come across over the last 5.5 years, they've understood that they're perimenopausal by having a conversation with a friend or
mm,
another woman.
mm,
And for me, it's about talking and communication and
mm,
connecting with other women. And
mm.
that they don't even have to be the same age.
Yeah.
So the average age of menopause is 51, but some women it will kickstart at 45. And if you can be perimenopausal 7 to 10 years before that, it can happen mid to late 30s.
Yeah.
So literally just having a chat and being honest with a mate or another woman that you've met, I think makes a huge difference, because you get that connection and then you think, oh, actually, thinking about it, I felt like that, or I've experienced
Mm,
that, or perhaps that's a perimenopausal symptom, because
mhm,
we don't have that education at the moment. So
mm.
sitting on the loo for a couple of minutes and having a weekly conversation with a group of ladies or some friends,
Yeah. I think I'm literally going to say exactly what you both said because what I do in the morning, and I started doing it probably like a couple of months ago. I started doing a lot of like inner child healing. And one thing, yeah, it's beautiful because I'm not anymore. I mean, I used to, but like I'm not really afraid of like deep, intense emotions or traumatic emotions. I'm like, okay, let's dig in. Let's see what's happening, why it is happening. So basically, every morning, I put my hand on my heart. So as soon as I wake up, and I'm like, okay, what does little Amani? She's 6 years old. What does little Amani need today? What does she need? Not me, the Amani today, but like, what is the 6-year-old Amani need right now? And it's usually nothing that I was planning to do, obviously. And I'm like, okay, okay. So, and that's beautiful because that's the way I am in tune with my body.
Yeah.
But then also back to what you were saying, Vanessa, it's all like I love sharing, talking about health. I think it's so important having these conversations. And this is the phase that I am in as well. Like
Yeah.
I am constantly like either it's on social media, like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I do workshops. I don't want to shut up about it basically
Yeah.
because everyone needs to know about,
Yeah.
what we do. In my case, it's nutrition. So that's my
Yeah.
expertise. So I talk a lot about it. But yeah,
I think
talking
that
about it. Yeah.
my friends are just sick of having this menopause as a subject of conversation, quite frankly. Can we talk about something else, please? Do you have to keep going on about
Yes, I
this?
do.
And with me, it's research and medical studies. Oh, I've just found this wonderful study about X, Y, and Z.
Oh my God.
I literally had a good friend say to me, I don't need that level of information or detail. Just just give it,
Um,
condense it down into one
Filter
sentence
it.
for
Yeah.
me. Yeah, exactly.
but I'm the same. I'm a geek. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I hear you.
That's why these groups are so good because I know. My husband is like, I don't want to hear about cancer anymore, you know?
Mhm.
It's true. I think that's the first thing. Well, when it's part of your job, it's an important thing when you launch your practice to understand that your friends are not necessarily your clients.
Exactly.
And it's a hard lesson to integrate. But it's also with friends that you can have different conversations. And I think it's really interesting to be open, to be challenged by that. And it's nice to be challenged because maybe there is a different way to send the information or to share the information.
Yeah.
Maybe going the scientific way is not always.
But this is what I call it's been a couple of years at this point, but this is what I call brainwashing, but like in the most positive way, obviously, because I've been talking about the same thing. There is no one, like none of my friends, like all of my friends, sorry, know about gut health. They have to because I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's brainwashing over a couple of years. And now I see them eating their sauerkraut. They have started, I don't know, like introducing more prebiotic fiber, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I
Yeah.
didn't say anything. I just talked about it, but I didn't tell you to do anything. But I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
it's working.
It is so important. And I'm actually very grateful that you all made it tonight. And I hope the audience is also grateful for that. I see that some people in the audience agree and resonate with what you're saying. Lucy Harper is with us as well in the chat and sharing her agreements. It's If anyone in the audience has still some unanswered questions or anything that they'd like to post in the chat, please do share it. We still have a few minutes before we wrap things up. But also, please do feel free to connect with these wonderful ladies because I know them. But it's an opportunity for you to get to know them. And I say I know them. I've definitely grown to know them through this process a lot more. And it's been truly a gift. And I think it's these moments that we need to multiply. And I think it's always, every time we get to an episode, I'm like, should I continue doing this? And every time I arrive at the end of the episode, I'm like, I would rot in hell if I don't keep up.
It's a hell yes. You
Yes,
keep
it's a
going.
hell yeah.
It's a hell yes.
So, yes, please do connect with each other, connect with these wonderful ladies. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to say it, resilience is key.
Mhm.
Love and resilience. And I think there's beauty in it because we're expanding as we speak.
Yeah.
Going back to this elastic, I do think that I do agree about the stretching. I just think it never gets back to its original form. But it's not a bad thing, it's the beauty of it.
Absolutely.
We mold and we progress into something new every single day, 1% better. And yeah, if you had one thing that you'd like to leave our audience on, what would it be?
Oh God.
You have less than a minute each, so
Oh God. Just pile the pressure on even more, Mina.
There's just so much. Okay. Hmm.
Lucy is sharing with us that she believes mums have no choice but to be resilient. That's
Mm,
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
that's true.
powerful. I think it's that no choice aspect is super important in what we do. And I'm giving you more time, ladies, to think about your final words. But
thank you.
I think there is this important connotation and also misconception about resilience that is acquired by like the toughness of life and not having the choice. But I strongly do want to believe that it's something that can be taught, that can be shared, that can grow. And to not give up on yourself or on others when you think, oh, I'm just not that person. I'm just not, this is not my nature.
Mm,
It can be, because that's the beauty of resilience. It can grow. It's innate nature, it is progress. So whilst there are certain traumas or life situations that can force you to grow, it's also something that you can embrace.
mm. It's a little bit like, again, very visual. I like the idea of resilience being a muscle that you train, like, going to the gym. Um, and um, and yeah, and before you know, you can, I don't know, because I love lifting weights. Before you know, you can lift like 100 kilos, because you have trained that muscle, right? So yeah, I think, w- w- like, 'cause we were thinking about what we want to say, just one thing. So uh, I don't know what comes to my mind, and maybe we didn't really have the time to talk about it, but it's leaning into discomfort. Very often we want to like run away from discomfort because, yeah, it's uncomfortable. But I actually want to encourage people to get curious, to lean into discomfort and get curious about whatever it is that they're dealing with or struggling with. So, because it can be beautiful.
Mhm. Yeah. As a good friend of mine always say, growth is on the other side of suck.
Amen.
Haven't heard that one before. Yeah, I like that.
She's sick of me using it.
And I think what leading on from what Amani said, the same thing. I would say take a deep breath and take the next step.
That's
Yeah.
very insightful. I think for me, it's just not just because you're given a certain hand and dealt a certain hand doesn't mean to say you have to play it. Don't accept the
Mm,
cards that you were dealt. So just because this certain situation has put you in a certain place doesn't mean to say you can't get out of it.
Mm.
And you can do what if I've been able to do what I've been able to do, anybody can do anything, quite frankly.
Love it.
That is such a beautiful note to end on. And I'm so grateful for every single one of you in the audience and our panelists. I'm so grateful to have you with us tonight. We've shared a wonderful moment, and I hope you've appreciated it as much as we appreciate you. And to you, my amazing speakers, I do appreciate you, and I really appreciated this moment. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself.
Thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
beautiful. Thank you.